Wart?
Hi, can you play Marmalade Cream?
Get a life, jerkweed.
If you can, I'll give you $5.
Yeah, we can play it. Thanks. Wellsville, are you ready to rock?
One can build a story around a plot quite easily. One can build a story around a theme. It happens all the time. One can build a story around an image, a particular idea, a single scene. But to build a story around a specific vibe, a hard-to-describe emotion, and I don't just mean the story has that vibe, I mean it's about that vibe. That is an interesting challenge. And it's a challenge that the Adventures of Pete and Pete took on more than once. And usually, these ended up being the show's best episodes. Hard Day's Pete is the 8th and final episode of the Adventure of Pete and Pete's first season, the 13th episode overall if you're counting the specials. Originally airing on January 16, 1994, the episode was written by show creators Will McRobb and Chris Viscardi, and directed by B.K. Small, which is a very difficult name to Google as it thinks you're trying to look up Burger King menus. It's actually a pen name for Barbara Kanowitz, who directed a lot of Comedy Central stand-up specials, some of the Snick concerts, and co-created the Nick Mom show Take Me to Your Mother, a documentary series about comedian Andrea Rosen learning about motherhood. I find this episode particularly nostalgic, not just because I watched it when I was young, but because a lot of the stuff in this episode mirrors moments in my youth. For example, the episode opens with a look at Little Pete's pirate radio station, Wart Radio, which is just a walkie-talkie with the send button taped down.
Wart had everything you'd want from a radio station. Everything but music. Music just wasn't important to Pete. Every so often, somebody would call in with a request.
Wart.
Hey dude, can you play Marmalade Cream? It's my favorite song.
And he would always say the same thing.
Get a life, jerkweed.
And it's funny because I actually did the same thing. Not the walkie-talkie part, mind you. I had this electronics kit that you bought from Radio Shack, and it did different things depending on how you wired it, including a radio broadcast function. It was super weak. The signal went like 30 feet at best, but I still attached a tape recorder and played They Might Be Giants into the ether. Little Pete's not much of a music guy, however, so he just goofs off and upsets the neighbors. That is until one day, running late for school, Little Pete stumbles onto a band playing in a garage. A garage band, if you will. And they play the first song that really seems to affect Pete. It's Pete's first favorite song.
Every time I guess and every little mess I made, and I was around, and I was around.
However, this isn't a published song that you can buy a CD of at your local Sam Goody. You won't hear it on the radio. And when Little Pete returns to the garage where he heard the song, there isn't a trace of this mystery band. All Little Pete has is his memory of the song, a song that he only heard once while in a rush. Memory is fallible, and it's only a matter of time before the song is gone forever. So with the song slowly eroding in his head, Little Pete does the only thing he can do. Learn to play the guitar so that he can play the song himself.
Then came the whammy bar, which made a sound that for some reason affected Artie like deadly kryptonite.
Powers useless, growing weaker.
This leads to Little Pete forming his own band to try and reconstruct the song, but all that playing is driving up the electrical bill. At the risk of being shut down, the band starts taking radio requests for $5 a pop, with Little Pete suddenly engaging with a ton of music he never gave a second thought before. But is all of this at risk of losing that original song?
But when he got there, all that was left was one single solitary note. That was all he could remember.
One lousy note.
have my own lost song. It's not my favorite song like it is for Little Pete, but it's a good song that stuck with me, performed by an indie band that I saw when I was a freshman in high school. There's no record printing, no online presence. They were just a garage band who played a song that I really loved, and more than 20 years later can only remember one lyric. Here's a quarter for your disorder. That's it. That's all my brain has retained these last 20 plus years. But the emotions I felt when listening to that song have stayed with me. That vibe of connecting with something so fleeting is very tangible and very relatable in this episode. Music is a very important element to the Adventures of Pete and Pete. It's seen as communal, bringing people together. Little Pete's band, the neighbors, family. It allows for human connection. It engages with creativity. Little Pete wouldn't have picked up a guitar if he hadn't heard his favorite song. Music is so important to the show that it's often casting musicians for minor roles. Hard Day's Pete has two such examples. Little Pete's math teacher and bandmate, Miss Fingerwood, is played by Sid Straw, an indie rocker who got her start doing backup vocals for Pat Benatar and playing for the Golden Palominos.
Summers we spent always seeing you smile makes me wonder where that time went.
Also in the band is Meterman Mel Ratner, played by Marshall Crenshaw, a very Buddy Holly-inspired singer-songwriter, so much so that he played Buddy Holly in the film La Bamba.
Oh, sorry. Man, my brain was flipping like a pancake.
Getting two actual rock musicians in Pete's fictional band helps add some authenticity. They're not actors pretending to play instruments. It also reveals the kind of music the people behind the show were influenced by, the kind of scenes they were participating in as they made the show. And yeah, The Adventures of Pete and Pete does feel like the television equivalent of alternative rock at times. Which brings us to Polaris, the band Little Pete discovered in the garage. You may recognize them from the show's opening, singing the theme song, Hey Sandy. Polaris was something of Pete and Pete's house band, made up of most of the members of Miracle Legion, while the band was on hiatus while dealing with contract matters. Polaris is a strange entity, not a fully fictional band releasing music like the Archies or Gorillaz, but also they don't really exist outside of the context of the show. And with this episode, they become something of a phantom presence diegetically, after which their appearance in the show's opening and their frequent appearance in the show's soundtrack take on some additional weight, becoming something of an indirect Greek chorus, and in Little Pete's case, actual muses. But for all we've talked around it, what about the song itself? Well, it's called Summer Baby, and you can find it on Polaris' 1999 album, Music from the Adventures of Pete and Pete. Personally, I think it would have been hilarious if they committed to the bit and didn't have this song on the album, making it a fleeting memory for everybody, but what can you do? The song itself reflects its own use in the story. It's about a woman who shows up, makes an impression on the song's point of view character, and vanishes so completely, the only logical conclusion is that she was an angel. And this Summer Baby, this angel, also inspires the singer to create things. I think this song might be about masturbation.
When I'm alone, I do things that nobody knows. And every drop of sex and every little mess I made, I was around.
Yeah, this is a song about a guy jerking it to a cute girl who passed through town, isn't it? The television version replaces every drop of sex with every little guess, cleaning it up for the Nickelodeon crowd, but wow, Lil Pete's favorite song is a song about jerking it. Yeah, that feels about right. Of course, this isn't the only Polaris song on the show's soundtrack, and musical guest stars would continue to crop up from time to time. Hard Day's Pete is a fantastic episode, and it really taps into a very specific and very tangible feeling. Music is a significant part of the Adventures of Pete and Pete's identity, as it is a significant part of our own lives. How else does music affect the show? Well, that's for another video. This was just a sample.